Last year I went on probably the strangest trip of my life. Testing. Is that better? Okay.
Better? Awesome.
All right. Last year I went on the strangest trip of my life. I went to North Korea, and I figured it's pretty. If you know much about North Korea, it lends itself quite well to telling a story. For tonight, it's the most isolated country in the world, and I really could, as I was trying to figure out what story to tell, it was really difficult because you end up with so many stories, and I could spend a whole night and tell you stories. I could talk for 25 minutes and just give you bizarre facts. Instead of doing that, I'm just going to tell you one experience I had because it was really strange. And I also just want to acknowledge that I'm going to talk a little bit about North Korea, but if you know much about it, it's really complicated. So there's a whole lot of stuff I'm not going to talk about that happens that is really kind of fucked up. But I know about those things, but I probably won't have a chance to really talk about them. So the one story I want to tell you about is when you get there, the first couple days you get there, they like to test you. And what they want to do is put you in circumstances and see whether or not you're a troublemaker or whether or not you're going to behave properly. And if you do that, then they'll continue to take you to cooler and cooler places. If you misbehave, you're not going to get to see very much. So the first 2 days I went to this place. It's called the International Friendship Exhibit. And it's a couple hours north of Pyongyang, which is the capital. And it is basically you drive up in a bus, and then you end up in a beautiful valley high in the mountains. And you come across these 3 buildings, and they're like Japanese-style buildings. They're Korean, but if you were to see them, you'd probably consider them to look very Japanese in style. But they're fortified like you'd expect to see something in a communist country. They're made of solid stone, and they're really impressive. And only the front of them is visible. The back of them is built right into the mountain just because they're very paranoid and everything has to be a bunker. And so what these places actually are that they make such a big deal about is a collection of gifts that the various leaders have received over the years. And in Korean culture, it's a really big deal when you visit someone to give them a gift. It's a show of respect. So when you're Kim Il-sung or Kim Jong-il or Kim Il-un, the youngest son, if you're coming to visit them and you're a dictator, you're going to bring some pretty interesting stuff. So there's over 220,000 gifts in these buildings. There's over 300 rooms, and you will stumble across things like a armored luxury vehicle from that was a gift from Stalin. You will come across the largest ivory tusks I've ever seen in my life that are from some horrible dictator from Africa, and you can and you're totally conflicted because they're beautifully carved, but yet they've come from an animal larger than you could possibly imagine that now doesn't exist. And then right beside that will be an autographed basketball from Michael Jordan. So that is like the kind of normality that you're experiencing as you're going through this place, and it's extremely bizarre. But the strangest thing about this place, and the strangest thing that I think everyone in the group experienced, was you go to one particular room there, and when you go through North Korea, it's like a very serious experience. The whole time they're telling you how to behave. They're telling you a ton of rules, I could tell you, which they're super strange. I'll tell you a quick one. If there's an image of one of the leaders in a newspaper, you cannot fold on any page. You cannot fold that newspaper in that place. And you can't fold an image of them ever, even in a newspaper. You can't chuck it away. At the end of your stay, if you don't want to take your newspaper with you, you leave it on a table and they do something with it. So there's about 30 or 40 of those kind of rules. So when it comes to this particular room, in an already serious country, they make it even more serious. This is the biggest, this is the time you have to behave the best. And so the other thing they start telling you about this room is that one of the big things they tell you about this room is that if you previously had any doubts that North Korea was the greatest country that has ever existed in society, once leaving this room, all doubt will be gone. So you can imagine that's really high expectations for any room that's ever existed. But particularly this one, so that that's like hype like you've never experienced in your life, and yet there's very stringent rules. When you go in, you have to wear booties. You cannot make contact with anything. You cannot touch anything. You cannot talk the whole time you're in this room. And so you can't open the door. They open it for you. You walk in, and it's a totally pitch black room. And far on the end is what looks like a valley, like a perfect preserved valley. And if you were to think of something you'd see in a natural history museum, it's that, but if they were to totally ignore like reality and create the most perfect day that has ever existed. And that's what's at the very end of the room. And so you walk towards this, and standing right in the middle is a freakishly accurate wax statue of Kim Il-sung, the leader. And wax statues to begin with are quite freaky. But this is one of a leader, and you basically have to treat this as though you're meeting the Pope. And so you're approaching it, and they spend a lot of time on the smile. That's like, to them, there's actually like artists. It's really difficult for artists to do eyes. To them, the biggest thing is to get a perfect smile. So it's a super creepy smile, and you're there, and as a group, what you have to do is you have to stand there and you have to bow. And you have to, bow down and totally and show respect to him. And then by doing this, you've acknowledged, your respect and everything like that. And hopefully you get to do all the cool stuff. And as you can imagine, this being with a bunch of North Americans, it becomes really difficult not to laugh. And purposely, when I went into the room, the friends I did have that I made on the trip, I made sure to put them over there and me over here, so I wouldn't laugh. And then on top of that, they have a perfectly placed fan that you can't see that's just hitting the back of his head, and there's a tuft of hair, and it's just sort of blowing lightly in the wind. And I think to them, this is the most glorious thing you could possibly imagine. But to me, it's fucking hilarious. And you're trying not to laugh. And what makes it even more difficult is the consequences of laughing. If you laugh, you probably didn't just screw up your trip and everyone that's with you, because you're not going to go and see all the cool stuff. But as a result, you might get your guide in trouble. And when you get in trouble in North Korea, especially being a North Korean, that's a really big problem. I'm not going to say they're going to send them to a camp, but they might send them away for a little bit, and you really don't want to do that. So it's a really bizarre experience, because you're trying not to laugh because you've never had stakes this high in your life. And so I bit my tongue really hard, and I bowed, and we exited the room, and everyone was in this bizarre state that they couldn't talk. Everybody was in shock, because you've had to suppress things in a way that you've never normally ever had to, and probably that's a little more normal for people in North Korea, but for us it's really kind of disturbing and stuff. So yeah, that was one of the most messed up experiences I had in North Korea. Thank you.